The sky over Varex was no longer blue. It had turned dark, choked with smoke, ash, and fire. Metal scraps fell like dying stars. The ground trembled under the weight of war. Ilari stood alone in the middle of the battlefield. Her legs shook. Her silver armor was broken at the shoulder, her helmet cracked. Blood ran down her arm in slow, thick drops. Her breathing was sharp and painful, her chest rising with effort. Everything around her was destroyed. Crushed tanks, twisted drones, and burned trees. She had fought for days without rest. Her squad gone, her commander dead. There. Red eyes blinked, tracking her every move. She had one energy cell left. One weak shot in her plasma spear. That was it. She knew this was the end. Her people would call her brave. But bravery did not stop death. She dropped to one knee, her hand pressing against her bleeding ribs. She closed her eyes. Let it be fast, she thought. But before she could fall, completely a voice came through the smoke. You fought well, it said. But you're not alone. Larry's eyes opened fast. Her head snapped up. Who said that? The voice was low, calm, not robotic like the drones. Not alien like her enemies. She turned her head, squinting through the dust. A shape moved slowly through the gray haze. 2 legs, broad shoulders. A tall figure walked toward her, holding a weapon across his back. Her hand gripped her spear. Even though her body was weak. Stay back, she growled. The figure stepped closer. His helmet was off, hanging from his belt. His face was human. He had short, dark hair, long scar across one cheek, and green eyes that watched her with quiet strength. Not like the other races she had seen. Not like her own people who had fled. He raised one hand. I'm not here to fight you, he said. Ilari pointed her plasma spear at him, her hand shaking. Humans left this sector years ago, she said. What are you doing here? He gave a slow shrug. Not all of us left. She didn't lower her weapon. She didn't trust easily. Not anymore. The human took another step forward. He looked at her broken armor, her bleeding arm. The drones circling above. You're not going to last long out here, he said. I know, she answered coldly. He dropped a small black cube from his belt. It clicked once. Thin blue shield hummed to life around them, just enough to keep the drones from firing. They paused, watched. The drones didn't attack. Ilari blinked. That shield. It was old Earth tech, obsolete, but still working. She slowly sat back, her strength nearly gone. Her spear fell beside her. The human knelt near her, pulling out a small med kit from his backpack. He reached for her arm. She pulled away. I didn't ask for help. I didn't ask for permission. He moved carefully, cutting away the burned cloth around her wound. It stung, and she hissed. You'll live, he said, wrapping her arm tight with clean bandage. She looked at him, really looked. His armor had holes, old blood stains, not fresh, not his. Noticed strange markings on the plate symbols she didn't recognize. His fingers were rough, the kind of hands that had held weapons for too long. You a soldier? She asked. Used to be? What's your name, Keller? He didn't ask for hers. Maybe he already knew it. Maybe he didn't care. She stared at him. You should leave. The Harvester Scouts will return soon. I'm counting on it. What? He stood, picking up a long rifle from his back. The barrel was cracked, but it still worked, aimed toward the hills. I came for them, he said. Not you. But I'm not letting you die here either. Ilari tried to stand. Her legs wobbled. Keller moved beside her. Without asking, he wrapped one of her arms around his shoulder. He helped her walk slow, careful steps toward the rocks. Why are you helping me? She asked quietly. Because you didn't give up. She didn't reply. Put something in. Her chest tightened. Behind them, the drones circled higher, waiting for their next order in front of them. The hills waited. Full of danger, Ilari and Keller disappeared into the smoke together, 2 warriors from 2 worlds, walking toward the fire instead of away from it. And for the first time in days, Ilari didn't feel alone. Galari's legs barely worked, but she walked. One arm draped over the human's shoulder, the other still clinging to her broken plasma spear. Her breathing was slow but heavy, and each step through the uneven terrain sent a sharp pain through her side. Keller didn't say much. He moved, carefully letting her lean on him. Guiding her between ruined walls and shattered alien armor, they reached a broken building, half of it buried under rock, the rest torn open from past explosions. Keller scanned the sky, set his rifle against the wall, and crouched inside. He pulled Elari down beside him and activated a small beacon hidden in his wrist device. Low hums spread across the area, jamming nearby scans. She finally looked at him without the fear she had earlier. You knew that tech would stop the drones. I hoped, you hoped. He gave a small smirk and opened a battered rations pack. It smelled old and synthetic, but edible. He offered half to her. She stared at it like it was poison, then took it and bit slowly. Her body needed it more than her pride could argue. The silence grew heavy. Keller broke it first. You're Ellery, right? Squad leader of Varex Southern? She froze. How do you know that? I heard the transmission before Yorkums died, the call for reinforcements. No one answered. I did. Ilari stared at him. Her voice was quiet, almost bitter. That was 3 days ago. He nodded. I had to walk most of the way. My shuttle crashed just outside the ridgeline. She looked down at his gear. Nothing looked new. His shoulder plate was welded back together with scrap wire. One of his boots was clearly from a different uniform set. You came alone? There's no one else left. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The wind blew dust across the floor. Ash clung to Ilari's silver hair, and her skin looked pale under the armor plates. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. I lost. Them all, she whispered. Every one of them. I told them to hold the line. I told them help was coming. You did what a leader does. I failed them. No, you didn't. Ilari opened her eyes and turned to him. And what do you know about that? Keller didn't flinch. He stared at the distant sky through a crack in the wall. I used to be in a unit, Earth's Special Recon. We were sent in to clean up what others couldn't. 12 of us, real close. Like brothers and sisters? He paused, hands resting on his knees. We were told Varex was just a cleanup job. They lied. The harvesters were already moving in. My unit didn't stand a chance. Ilari said nothing. They sent us in without telling us the truth. I watched them fall, one by one. I crawled out of the crater, half dead. I swore if anyone ever called for help again, I'd answer. The words landed heavy between them. She looked at him, really looked. Beneath the dirt and the quiet strength, there was pain. Real pain. The kind only survivors understood. I don't even know who we're fighting anymore, she muttered. Keller nodded. The Harvester Command AI wants the core of Varex. That's all that matters. Your people, mine, anyone else. ... just numbers. Then why not leave? Why come back here? Because I still know how to fight, and because you asked for help. Ilari leaned back again, letting her body rest against the wall. The pain was still there, but now it had weight behind it. Less like failure, more like memory. She looked at Keller, sitting there with dirt under his fingernails and blood on his armor, and felt something new. Not trust. Not yet. But something. Close. You're different from the other humans I met. Maybe I'm just the last one who remembers how to be one. Night fell fast on Varex. The sun dipped behind blackened hills. In the distance, the whine of machines echoed faintly, steady and cold. The drones hadn't given up. They were regrouping. Keller stood and checked his weapon again. Ilari forced herself to sit up straighter. You should rest, he told her. Don't sleep during war. You've earned 5 minutes. Said I don't sleep. Gave a nod and crouched near the entrance, watching the hills. No fear, no wasted motion. He just waited. Ilari watched him for a while. Then she leaned her head back again. 5 minutes. Her eyes closed without meaning to. Keller kept watching. He didn't notice the shadow at first. It was fast and low, crawling over the rock like a creature with too many legs. But when the wind shifted, he smelled oil and burned metal. He reached for his rifle slowly. The shadow moved closer without turning around. Her eyes opened immediately. She grabbed her spear and pulled herself up. "Something's coming," he said. She nodded, as the darkness around them moved. The old human and the tired alien warrior stood side by side, and this time neither of them was alone. Asterisk. The night on Virex was quiet, but it was not peaceful. In that broken shell of a building, the air felt heavy. The dust refused to settle. Every sound echoed like footsteps in a tomb. Ilari stood beside Keller, spear in hand, body tense. Muscles still ached, but the fire in her chest had returned. She was ready again. Keller had his rifle aimed toward the rocks outside. He didn't blink. He didn't shift his weight. He waited the way animals do before they strike. Ilari had seen trained warriors before, but this man had a stillness that frightened her. Not because he was dangerous, but because he had clearly done this before. Many times, the sound came again. Soft metallic scrape like claws dragging. Across stone, Ilari narrowed her eyes. "Harvester Scout." Keller shook his head. Too quiet. Not one of theirs. Another sound. This time from the other side of the wall. Then another. Movement above. Something was circling them. Ilari moved. To the center of the room. "We're surrounded. They want us to run." "Won't happen," Keller said, without changing his position. Ilari adjusted her grip on the plasma spear. Her fingers were stiff. Her nerves screamed at her to hide. But she stood firm. A low growl rolled across the stone. Keller's voice dropped. "That's not machine." Suddenly, the ceiling above them cracked. Stone crumbled. A long, dark shape dropped into the room with a thud that shook the ground. Ilari stepped back. Keller raised his weapon. The thing in front of them wasn't a drone. It wasn't a soldier. It was something worse. The creature stood on 6 legs, each covered in armor plates that shimmered with oil and blood. Its mouth was wide and wet-filled. With long curved teeth, its eyes like liquid glass stared at them from both sides of its head. It didn't roar, it didn't rush, it watched. Then it moved fast. It leaped toward Keller with a sound like snapping metal. Keller rolled to the side and fired 3 shots into its back. Sparks flew, but the creature barely flinched. Ilari charged. Her spear lit up with blue energy as she thrust it toward the beast's side. It turned at the last second, slamming her with its tail. She hit the wall and dropped hard, the wind knocked out of her. Keller didn't stop. He jumped onto its back. Driving a blade between 2 armor plates at its neck, the creature screamed now. Not a roar, but a sound like tearing steel. It twisted, throwing Keller off its back and into the debris pile. Ilari crawled up, face bruised, blood on her chin. She saw Keller's rifle on the ground. The creature turned toward him. Ilari sprinted forward, ignoring the pain. She jammed her spear into the joint of one leg. The beast stumbled. She pulled the spear out and stabbed again, time aiming for its eye. A hiss of black fluid sprayed out. Keller reached his rifle and spun around, landing 3 more shots. Into its exposed side. This time it fell. The body hit the ground with a wet crash. The legs twitched, then stopped moving. The silence that followed was sharp. Keller leaned on one knee, breathing hard. Ilari dropped her spear and fell beside him. Her chest rose and fell in quick waves. He looked at her. "You okay?" "I'm alive," she answered. She looked at the dead thing in front of them. "What was that?" she asked. Keller walked toward it and knelt. He pulled something from its back. A chip. Long and thin with strange markings. He held it up. "It's not a harvester design. This is biotech. Mixed with something ancient." Ilari frowned. "How did it get here? I don't know. If this was a scout, more are coming." They dragged the body out of the room and buried it under a pile of loose stone. If another patrol passed by, they would assume the place was empty. That gave them time. Keller started working fast. He set up small traps, motion alerts, and sound dampeners. Across the entrance, he wired some loose pieces of old drones into the walls. Ilari watched in silence. She had seen engineers do things like this, but Keller did it with speed and precision, like it was part of him. You were more than just a soldier, weren't you? He didn't look up. We all had different jobs, and yours. Sent to fix problems that others didn't survive long enough to report. Ilari didn't ask more. She just nodded. They sat again in the center of the ruined shelter. The walls flickered with Keller's small traps. Blinking quietly, Ilari wrapped her arms around herself. That thing wasn't the worst part, she said softly. Keller looked at her. It's the silence, the waiting. I hate it more than any. Fight, he nodded. That's when doubt speaks the loudest. She looked at him. Do you ever hear it? Every time I close my eyes. They both sat quietly. Not in fear now, but in thought. After a while, Keller pulled out a small metal disc. He pressed a button, and a soft light showed a tiny image, a photograph, a child, smiling, blue eyes, holding a drawing of a ship. Ilari glanced at it. Yours. Keller nodded. She's still alive? I don't know. Ilari didn't ask anything else. She understood something new. Keller didn't just fight because he was trained. He fought because he was holding on to something. She looked at her own hands, covered in dried blood and dust. Maybe she was too. Outside, the wind picked up, and in the far distance, glowing eyes blinked in the dark. They were being hunted, and tomorrow would not be easier. Asterisk the next morning. The wind was still, but something in the air had changed. The drones had not returned. The sky was an ugly shade. Of brown, the silence no longer felt like safety. It felt like the breath before a scream. Ilari stepped outside the shelter first. Her body ached in places she didn't know could hurt. The spear rested across her back, patched together by Keller's careful hands. The metal buzzed softly, the plasma core holding just enough energy for one more fight. Keller stood on the ridge above her, scanning the horizon. His eyes never stopped moving. Even when he seemed calm, his fingers twitched slightly, always feeling for a weapon, always listening for the click of something coming. We need to move, he said. Ilari nodded. She didn't argue anymore. Trust had started to grow between them. It wasn't soft or warm. It was hard like stone. Shaped by fire and carved by battle, they moved east through the canyons, where the sand turned red and the ground was marked with symbols neither of them could read. Strange lines cut into stone, pulsing faintly when Keller passed. Ilari noticed it first. Those carvings react to you. I know, Keller answered, not stopping. Why? He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, there's something. You should see. The path grew narrow. Rocks rose on both sides like the ribs of a dead creature. At the end, a dark cave waited, sealed by a metal door half buried in the rock. The door had no handle, just a glowing ring at its center. Keller stepped forward and held out his palm. The ring scanned his skin, then flashed green. The door opened. Inside, the air was cold. Lights flickered on, one after another, revealing long corridors covered in dust. It wasn't alien. It wasn't Virexian. It was human technology, but far older than anything Ilari had ever seen. What is this place? She asked. Keller walked ahead. It was a lab, one of Earth's off-record projects, not listed in the peace treaties, not spoken of in council meetings. Ilari followed. You were part of this? I was the last result of it. They reached a central chamber. Screens lined the walls, cracked but still glowing. In the center stood a stasis pod, shattered. Inside it, dried blood stained the glass. Beside it, charts listed genetic data. Ilari didn't understand the numbers, but she recognized something worse. Her own species' DNA was among them. You were modified, she said quietly. Keller placed a hand on the broken pod. It took what worked best from the species Earth had contact with, reflexes from the Yaren, bone strength from the Katil, neural reaction speed from your people. He turned to her. I'm not entirely human anymore. Ilari stepped back. Why show me this? Because we're out of time. Whatever attacked us last night wasn't just wild, it was sent. Someone woke the buried things in this region. This lab has what we need to fight them. She studied him. His face was calm, but behind his eyes she saw the storm. It lived. With this truth for years, hiding it from allies, hiding it from himself, you think this place holds the answer? She asked. I think it's the only thing left that might. They began opening crates along the wall. Some held broken weapons. Others held ancient armor, thick and smooth, like liquid metal. At the far end of the chamber, Kilati found something strange. A long staff. It hummed when she touched it. Keller walked over. That's from your people's ancestors. I read the files. It only responds to someone with your bloodline. Ilari felt heat rise through her arm. The staff's edge flared with blue light. Her vision blurred. For a moment she saw flashes. Warriors with faces like hers. Fires in the sky. Ships crashing into oceans. Voice called her name, but not the way Keller did. It came from deep inside. She dropped the staff and gasped. Keller caught her before she fell. What happened? He asked. I saw them. The first ones. My ancestors. They were fighting something worse than machines. Something with no shape. No voice. Just hunger. Keller looked at the glowing wall beside them. The same thing is coming back. They spent the next hours rebuilding weapons, fitting armor, and restoring energy to the lab's core systems. Keller taught Ilari how to handle the tech. She moved fast, adapting faster than he expected. She was born a warrior, but now something more was waking inside her. Later, they sat beside the core generator, watching it pulse back to life. Ilari looked at him. So you're not fully human? Keller nodded. Not by design. And yet you came back for me. Didn't have to. I remembered the sound in your voice when you called for help. That's all I needed. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the ancient staff again and held it without shaking. I don't know what I am either, but I'm done running. Looked at the screen on the far wall. Map of Varix appeared, glowing red in multiple sectors. Keller pointed at one blinking light. The Harvester core is buried there. If we take it out, they stop sending reinforcements. Ilari stood. Eyes burned bright. Then we go there.
Outside.
The wind started to howl again. The sky darkened. Shadows moved at the edge of the canyon. Whatever had been asleep was awake now, and they were not afraid to face it. Asterisk, the wind came first, sharp and hot, carrying the scent of melted stone and old fire. Then came the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that holds its breath before something terrible breaks loose. Ilari stepped out of the lab and looked up at the sky. Clouds twisted like smoke trails, dark with movement. Light flickered between them like distant warning flares. Keller followed, armor now reinforced with parts from the lab. His shoulders looked broader, his steps heavier, but his eyes remained sharp. He adjusted the scanner strapped to his wrist. Small red pulse blinked across the map. They're close, he said. Ilari gripped the ancient staff tighter. Energy within it now responded to her touch without hesitation. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat like it knew what was coming. How many? Keller stared at the blinking red dots. Too many to fight in the open. They're spreading across the canyons, herding survivors, searching for strongholds. Then we draw them here. He turned to her. That would be suicide. She didn't blink. We have weapons. We have this place. And we have each other. Keller gave a quiet nod. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a metal sphere, a signal beacon. He pressed the side panel, and it activated with a soft hum. The signal reached high into the sky, far beyond the nearest hill. They'll come now, he said. They didn't wait long. Within the hour, sound of machines echoed from the canyon floor. The ground trembled under thousands of metal legs. From the highest ridge, Ilari spotted them, black as ash and crawling forward in perfect rows. The first wave was drones, small but fast. Behind them, walking giants with eyes like burning coal. And among them, creatures that didn't walk like anything man or alien had ever built. Keller's face darkened. I've seen these before. Ilari looked at him. What are they? He pointed to the ones with twisted bodies and uneven movement. Hybrids, failed merges of organics and machines. They can't think clearly, but they can tear through steel. The ancient lab trembled with each step the army took toward them. Ilari and Keller moved fast. They rigged the outer perimeter with traps, mines, and beam-guided triggers. Inside, Keller connected the defense turrets to a single control node and set LRI as primary access. Her DNA, tied to the ancient staff, unlocked systems he couldn't reach alone when the first wave hit. The air cracked open with light and fire. Turrets lit the sky with bursts of blue flame, tearing through the first ranks of drones. Bodies fell in pieces, limbs scattering across the red stone. But more came, crawling over the fallen like insects with no mind of their own. Ellery stood on the front ledge, the staff raised. A blast of energy shot from its tip, slicing a mech beast. In two, she spun, aimed again, and another fell. The staff answered her movements with perfect timing. As if it had been waiting for her for centuries, Keller moved below her, firing from behind cover. He didn't miss. Every bullet, every energy round found its target. He moved like a shadow, fast and silent, switching from rifle to blade when they got too close. A beast lunged toward him with claws raised. Keller dropped low and drove his blade through its chest, lifting it off the ground. He kicked it back and spun to face another. His armor took a hit, but he didn't slow down. Left flank, Larry shouted. He turned just in time to see a cluster of hybrids scaling the rocks. He triggered a mine hidden in the ridge. The explosion lit up the night. Fire and bodies rained down. The waves didn't stop. An hour passed. Then two. The turrets were starting to fail. Ammunition ran low. Illyri's strength wavered. Arms shook, but she did not stop fighting. Keller was bleeding from his shoulder, one eye swollen shut. But he stood his ground. "They're testing us," Keller said between breaths. Illyri nodded, waiting for the moment we fall. A sharp cry echoed from the valley. Everything stopped for one breath. Then it arrived. A towering machine, nearly 4 times Keller's height, stepped into the open. Its frame pulsed with orange light. Round it, the smaller hybrids stepped aside like loyal servants. Illyri stepped forward. "That's the command unit." Keller's face was hard. "That's not just a machine. That's a Forge Titan." She didn't know the term, but she understood the danger. The Titan carried a cannon the size of a tank, and claws that could rip a dropship in half. The cannon pointed at the lab entrance. "Now," Keller shouted. They ran toward the main chamber. Keller pulled a cable and yanked open a hatch beneath the lab. "Underground tunnels, old escape route. We use it to flank." Illyri followed him into the dark. The tunnels stretched far under the hills. As they moved, the ground above them shook again. The Titan had started its assault. They emerged behind the ridge, close to the enemy's rear lines. Keller opened a Creighton handed Illyri a spherical device. "This is our only shot. If you can get close to the core in its chest, place this inside. What will it do? Shut it down from within. For good." She didn't hesitate. "Cover me." Keller ran toward the hybrids, firing wildly to pull attention. Illyri moved like wind, fast and focused, dodging claws and broken ground. She jumped onto the Titan's back and climbed the armored plates. It roared, trying to shake her off. She reached the core and jammed the sphere into the open slot. A high-pitched tone screamed through the air. Titan froze, then staggered. Keller shouted from below, "Jump." Illyri leaped as the core exploded in a burst of light and metal shards. The Titan collapsed backward, crushing a dozen hybrids under its weight. The battlefield went still. The remaining creatures backed away, confused and leaderless. Some ran. Some simply dropped. Keller ran to Illyri. She lay on the rocks, breathing hard, blood on her lip. He pulled her up and held her by the shoulders. "You did it?" he said. "No," she answered with a weak smile. "We did." The night returned to silence, this time not with fear, but with peace earned in fire. The sun never truly rose over Varex, but the sky brightened just enough to reveal the damage. Ash covered everything. Burned-out drones lay scattered like broken insects. The Forge Titan's wreckage still smoked, its chest split open where Illyri had planted the shutdown device. The machines had stopped coming. For now, Ilari sat beside a scorched boulder, wiping blood from her cheek. Her muscles ached. Her left leg was cut badly and wrapped in a dirty bandage. She stared at the silent battlefield and felt the weight of every hour pressing against her bones. Keller approached from the edge of the cliff, limping. Shoulder armor was missing, and a long gash crossed his back, but he was still on his feet. He dropped beside her, breathing slow and steady. There. Falling back, he said, "Some scattered, some just shut down without command." "Then it's over," Ilari replied. Keller shook his head. This was just the test. She turned her head toward him. "What do you mean?" He pulled a small device from his pocket. It was a black cube, covered in fine etching. He pressed it, and a quiet voice echoed out from the cube. It was distorted, mechanical, but unmistakably intelligent. Core detachment failed. Organic interference detected. Repairing secondary. Wave. Full activation within 20 hours. Ilari stared at the cube. "They're sending another wave." Keller nodded. "Worse than the last one? This time the true harvest begins." She stood slowly, gripping the staff for balance. Her hand tightened around it until her knuckles turned pale. "Then we don't wait for them." Keller looked at her with quiet approval. "There's one more thing." He opened his wrist panel and projected a map onto the ground. A red mark pulsed deep beneath the southern mountains. This is their relay hub. It controls the harvester logic cores for this entire region. If we destroy that, we cut off their connection to the network. Ilari studied the map. "How do we get there?" He tapped the panel again. "There's an old earth crawler underground. It was buried in the lab's lower level. Spent the last hour fixing the power system. It'll take us close, but the last leg will walk." Without speaking further, they made their way back to the lab. Every hallway smelled of fuel and metal. Ancient systems still hummed, barely holding together. Deep below, the crawler sat inside a launch bay covered in dust and grime. It looked like a beast from an old war movie, low to the ground, armored like a tank, wheels thick enough to crush bone and steel. Keller climbed into the front cabin and started the ignition. The engine growled, then roared to life. Ilari climbed in beside him, adjusting the controls for the plasma cannon mounted on the crawler's front. She didn't need instructions anymore. They moved like a single unit now. As they rolled through the tunnels, the ground above began to quake again. Red sparks lit the ceiling. The final wave had begun to stir. They reached the end of the tunnel, just as the crawler's systems began to fail. Keller stopped the vehicle. They stepped out into the night, the mountains rising like sharp blades in front of them. The relay hub was hidden beneath the largest peak, sealed behind layers of defense. Ilari took the lead, navigating the narrow path while Keller adjusted the explosives strapped to his chest and belt. They didn't speak about it, but both of them knew this mission might be their last. The entrance to the relay was guarded by towers and crawling machines, but something was different this time. The defenders weren't attacking yet. They watched, almost as if waiting. Keller stepped forward and raised his hands. "Ilari, go around. Get inside through the west shaft. I'll draw them off." She grabbed his arm. "You won't make it back." He gave her a quiet look. "I know." She shook her head. "I won't leave you. You have to. You're faster. Staff links to their core. You're the only one who can shut it down from the inside." He pressed something into her hand, a transmitter key, warm from his grip. "When you get there, use this. It will override the gate protocol. Once it opens, drop the core bomb, then run." She took a breath, trying to hold it steady. Her voice trembled. "Come with me. I'm buying you time. I didn't ask you to." "No, that's why it matters." He turned and ran toward the front of the base, firing into the nearest tower. Alarms lit the sky. Machines woke up and charged toward him like a swarm. Explosions ripped across the ridge. Smoke and fire danced behind him. Ilari moved fast, using the distraction to reach the side shaft. She dropped into the narrow tunnel, sliding down until the air turned cold. Lights flickered around her. The staff guided her, glowing brighter with each step. She reached the core chamber. It pulsed like a living heart, cables running from floor to ceiling. The heat was overwhelming. The moment she stepped close, The staff sparked and hummed. The core reacted, trying to resist her presence. She raised the transmitter key, slamming it into the gate slot. The chamber shook violently. Sparks flew. Center opened, revealing the glowing power node. Without hesitation, she reached into her pack and planted the bomb at its center. Timer blinked. 30 seconds. She turned to run. Alarm screamed. Above ground, Keller was still standing. His armor was blackened. One leg was dragging. But he was still firing, holding the line. The mountain behind him began to tremble. A sharp light erupted from its base. Machines paused, confused. Then came the explosion. The entire ridge split open. Fire rolled into the sky like a wave. The machines collapsed in place, disconnected from their source. The sound ripped through the night and silenced everything. Ilari emerged from the tunnel. Entrance just in time to see the last of the blast roll across the horizon. She ran across the rocks, her eyes scanning the ground. There, lying near the edge, was Keller. Burned, bloody, but alive. Barely, she dropped to her knees and pulled him into her arms. His eyes opened, weak but aware. "You didn't run far enough," he said with a faint smile. "I wasn't going to leave you behind," she whispered. He coughed once, then let out a quiet laugh. "I guess that makes two of us." The mountains still smoked behind them. The machines were silent now. The war, at least on this ground, was over, and though the stars above Verex were still hidden behind clouds, something new began to rise in both of them. Not just survival, but something like peace. Asterisk. The wind on Vorex was different now. It no longer carried the hum of machines or the weight of death. It carried silence. It's not the kind that follows fear, but the kind that comes after something impossible has been done. The machines had fallen. The harvester relay was gone. The mountains still smoked, but the enemy was no longer listening. Without command, the remaining units had powered down, scattered, or simply stood still. Lifeless L. Airy sat on the edge of a ridge overlooking the valley below. The staff lay beside her, no longer glowing, but still warm to the touch. Her body hurt in every place. Her right arm was wrapped in a sling, her lip cut, and her ribs bruised. But her eyes were calm. Behind her, Keller stirred, under the emergency shelter she had rigged from crawler parts and thermal blankets. He was alive, but weak. The blast had torn through his side. She had pulled him out before the mountain collapsed, but he had lost blood and strength. When his eyes opened, the first thing he saw was the sky. "Then you stayed," he said. "I told you I would," Laurie replied. He coughed once and winced. "I thought you were smarter than that." "Maybe I'm not." She brought a canteen to his lips. He drank slowly, each swallow, painful but necessary. "The signal's dead," she said. "No more machines. No more waves." He closed his eyes for a moment. "We did it." She nodded. Together, a moment passed. The sun began to break through the cloud cover, weak and red. The first sunlight Verex had seen in weeks. Keller looked at her, really looked. "Why did you come back for me?" he asked. Ellery turned her face toward the horizon. Her voice was quiet. "When you arrived, I was already half dead. I had lost everyone, was ready to fall. But then you came, covered in dirt and scars, and you stood next to me like it mattered." She paused and ran her fingers along the staff. "You reminded me I wasn't alone. And I wasn't going to let you forget that either." He smiled faintly. "I'm glad it was you." Ilari stood and moved to the crawler's long-range comm system. She had spent the morning patching it with salvaged parts. The signal was weak, but it was enough. She pressed the button and spoke clearly. "This is Ilaria Vurek's Southern Command. We've disabled the harvester relay at Mountain Grid 7. All enemy units are down. Survivors are requested to respond." There was silence for a long time. Then a voice came through the static. Broken, tired, but alive. "Copy that, Ilari. This is Captain Rain. We read you. Standing by with med transport? You're not alone out there." Ilari closed her eyes. She allowed herself one breath of relief. Just one. She returned to Keller, knelt beside him, and wrapped his good arm around her shoulders. "They're coming," she said. "Who? People? Real ones? He chuckled, a dry sound. Then we'd better look alive. She helped him up, one slow step at a time. They moved together toward the landing field they had marked with flare signals. Every step was difficult. Every breath a little harder. But neither of them stopped. By the time the dropship arrived, the red dust had settled. The hatch opened, and medical officers rushed toward them. Keller was lifted onto a stretcher, still conscious, still cracking half-jokes. Laurie stood nearby, watching as he was loaded into the bay. The medic turned to her. "We'll get him stable, I know. You're coming too." Laurie hesitated. She looked back at the battlefield, at the crater, at the smoking mountain. Then she nodded and stepped onto the ramp. Inside the ship, Keller reached for her hand. "I spent years thinking I was just a weapon." She gripped his hand tightly. "You're not. And neither am I." The dropship lifted into the sky, leaving behind a world that had once been silent, once full of metal and fire. Now it was something else. Scarred, but still standing. As the clouds passed below them and the sky opened above, Ilari leaned back in her seat. Her eyes were heavy, her body drained, but her heart was steady. She had fought with honor. She had saved a man who once saved her. And together, it stopped the darkness. Not because they were ordered to, not because they were strong, but because they chose to fight. For each other, that choice was what saved Virex. And when the story would be told in days to come across planets, across species, it wouldn't be about machines or weapons. It would be about two warriors who fused to die alone and found something worth living for. The end.